Well, good afternoon to you. I'm Bryce Tuskett with the Rural Radio Network. We do have the latest cattle on feed report, which has been released by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So joining me now to break it down is Kyle Bumstead with Allendale. Good afternoon to you, Kyle. We're going to talk about the numbers first, and we'll talk about what it means and even address what's been happening in cash here on a Thursday afternoon. First, what's the report tell us?
All right, Bryce, thanks for having me back. The on-feed estimate was 98.3% ahead of the report, and the USDA came out with 98.4%. So about right in line with expectations there. Placement number, we're looking for 104.2% of last year, and it came in at 105.1. I'm not really too worried about this placement number because last year we saw kind of low placements there. So you're working against a low placement number here to start with already. And the marketing number, they were estimated at 100.6 and it came in at 101.1, which stands to reason, which the way the box beef market was moving last month, then yeah, we should have higher marketing. So definitely an interesting cattle on feed report. I'm not really going to call it bearish, just probably neutral at best. And with the way things traded here going into it, it wouldn't surprise me if some of this was priced in. But I do want to point out that deeper down in the report, they did a breakdown of steers versus heifers and cows placed in the yards. And I thought it interesting. Well, not a big thing here, really. I'm not going to put much emphasis on it. Heifers placed this year was 37.6% versus 38.6% last year. Now, a lot of folks are going to say, yeah, there's herd rebuilding happening, but if it is, it's very, very light given these numbers here. 1% less versus last year. Not really a huge number here for us to really worry about right now.
Okay, Kyle, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, total placements jumped 5% for the month of March. What's that signal to you about cattle availability and producer sentiment?
That's a good question. We did see early on this year, we did have some weather issues and, of course, the border crossing issues down there. So I think some of that got relaxed just a little bit. A few more cattle come across the border. The weather straightened up here just a little bit. But up front here, I think that there's still some cattle around us here, given the weight situation that we have. I believe steers were up about 5 pounds this week. Heifers were down about 2 pounds. So we are still putting some tonnage on the market here, even though we have less numbers. I'll be the first to admit we've got less numbers, but we are still producing a pretty good amount of beef out there. But the demand situation so far has been seeming to pull us through here and keeping the cattle somewhat current, but there are still a few out there. I do think that once we get into the summer months, we're still going to see some of those higher numbers coming at us just because of the calf feds historically come at us. So we probably will see an uptick in numbers here on the horizon. But with grilling season here just on our doorstep here, about 30 days away from Mother's Day, I do think that the demand, if everything holds together economically, we should see some decent demand to keep us pulling through here.
You brought this up. Inventory down 2% from last year. Heifers down 4%. So perhaps that tells us a little bit, maybe a little bit of a breadcrumb about herd rebuilding. I guess we'll pay attention and see what happens in the months to come on that front. Don't want to make too much over it at the moment, Kyle. Nebraska, though, saw a 2% decline year over year, or 2% year over year increase in cattle on feed. Texas down 6%. Quite a bit of regional difference. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that is fair to say, but you got to go where the feed's at too. I mean, we've got the feed up here. We got a decent amount of forage up here from last year, and we got the corn up here too. I've been driving through eastern Nebraska here this afternoon, and there's corn piles everywhere you look. So, I mean, there's plenty of feed up here, which down there, they've got drought conditions. And don't get me wrong, we're dry here in Nebraska too. So it could be interesting moving forward as far as watching that heifer number, if that continues to grow in the feed yards or if that continues to decline in the feed yards. It's going to be very interesting given the dry situation we're at unless we start getting some rain.
Is it just me, or does today feel like a Friday? We're doing all of our afternoon reports as if we're going into the weekend because we don't have a trade tomorrow. To that point, what's happening in cash in the countryside?
Yeah, the countryside's been kind of blowing up here. The phone's been blowing up as far as cash trade here this afternoon. We have traded some cattle as high as 335 on a dress basis here to majors here in central Nebraska. We traded maybe a little bit higher than that. Can't get good confirmation on it to some regionals here in Nebraska. Also, we've traded as high as 210, maybe a little bit of light 211 down there in the Southern Plains, Kansas and Texas. I'd like to get a better confirmation on the 211 number, but 210 has been a big number thrown around down there. Week at 204, and they passed on that, and they wound up getting 210 here on a Thursday. So we also saw some 212 and some 213 trade here in eastern and central Nebraska as well this afternoon. So that definitely looks good here. We still got a little bit of a discount here, that April futures board compared to where the cash is sitting. So we could see this board continue to work up towards the cash. And speaking of which, April's in delivery. It goes off here soon. I don't look for anything in the way of deliveries because of the way the cash market's sitting.
212, 213 in the north. That'd be up, what, $5 from last week?
Yeah, $5 to $6 in some instances.
Yeah, pretty good activity. Close out the week as we head into the Easter holiday, right, Kyle?
Yeah, definitely. And to back that up, it wasn't just non-commercial fund and speculator buying. There was a lot of commercial buying here today too. Those forward spreads, the front months were leading the deferreds, and that's what you want to see in a bullish situation. You want to see the fronts pick it up here versus the deferreds. If the deferreds start picking it up, then I'm going to get a little bit nervous here as far as how much more the rally can be extended. So anytime you see the front months gain on the deferreds, that's a good looking situation.
That's Kyle Bumstead with Allendale joining us here on a Thursday afternoon. We break down the latest cattle on feed report coming out from USDA. Also sprinkle in some of the information we have when it comes to cash on a Thursday. I guess there's still time. Could keep going. Time will tell. Kyle, thank you very much for joining us. Happy Easter. Hope you have a good long holiday weekend, my friend.
Same to you and yours too.